Hello, welcome back to Geek Warning, the cycling tech focused podcast from Escape Collective. I'm Dave Rome, and this week we've got a Ronan. Ronan, how are you?
I'm good. That was a strong intro there, Dave. I liked it.
Oh, thank you. It's almost like I've now rehearsed it for 3 or 4 episodes.
I thought you were going to say 3 or 4 years.
It's been a while. I think I start to occasionally think how many podcasts I've made. Too many is the answer. But we're still here.
Would it even be possible to figure that out? Probably not.
It's a minimum one a week for 5 years now.
Oh, wow.
It's quite a lot, isn't it? Yeah. And then you've also, you started your own podcast just to try close in and try do more than me. So, yeah, I think you're
I'm just trying to catch up.
Too. Yeah, exactly.
Speaking of which, for listeners of Performance Process, there won't actually be an episode this week. I've got a big project that has been going on for this entire year, and I want to get it finished up. And so it's consuming morning, noon, and night right now. And this week's episode of Performance Process requires a written article to go with it, which I can't get to doing right now. So It will come.
All right. I would say I also just wrapped up a very large, noisy project of electric inflators, which we'll get to at the end of the episode.
Kind of related, actually.
It is. Should we tease what your Performance Process project is about, or should we just keep people waiting until it's actually done?
Yeah, I'm not sure if I would call it a Performance Process project because it's just an Escape Collective general. There may be people who don't listen to Performance Process who are interested to know that actually the trend to wider and lower pressure in our tires over the last 10 years may have been the wrong direction.
On the road.
Should I give more than that? On the road.
Yeah.
No,
I think that's a pretty good tease for now.
I mean, if you look at UCI Gravel Worlds at the weekend, not just on the road, but that's not what I'm
Interesting. Very good segue for a topic we want to talk about, which, UCI Gravel World Championships. And I guess we did see a number of tires that are not as wide as trends we've seen out of US gravel racing. We've seen tires that, quite frankly, just look like road tires being raced in the UCI Gravel World Championships and faring quite well.
Is that, do you think, course related or rider related? Because a lot of the riders were like World Tour pros, but also the course wasn't as gnarly as some US gravel courses can be.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I think there's a number of elements there. I think it's course related. I think it is rider related. I think it's sponsor related, that we're seeing a number of these pros on brands that may not make a suitable gravel race bike, and therefore they're sort of picking other bikes in the lineup that they can squeeze tires into, or that that is just believed to be the fastest setup for that course. I think it is a reminder though that gravel means very different things depending on where you are in the world. And for me, seeing like a Pidcock with a 50-tooth chainring and Mariano Vos with a slick rear tire are sort of all reminders that the gravel they're racing on is not like my gravel riding.
I don't know what yours is like, Dave, but Zach and I were texting while the Gravel World Championships were on Sunday, and we were remarking how much more exciting and fun that the course looked in Maastricht versus something like an Unbound, which once you've done the first 10-mile long straight, you've kind of done all the 10-mile long straights. I'm maybe exaggerating now, but
yeah, it's definitely the World Championships is definitely like a chaotic pack racing, should I say? Those sort of felt like there are moments of it almost emulating a cyclocross race in a sense like that. So I too didn't watch the whole race. I was but I sort of tuned into the tech, and I'd say there's certainly some interesting bike setups with a broad spectrum. We did see the mountain bike wide tires, but we also saw tires in the 35 mil or 40 mil range, and big gearing and very aero setups, aero positions, road like positions. And I think it is just goes to show that there is still a large divide in terms of what the bike industry wants you to believe a gravel bike should be. I think we do have a very segmented segment there, as far as you've got the full spectrum from UCI gravel racing through to like basically bike packing, and they're basically different. They're different activities. They're different sports.
Is it what the industry wants us to believe gravel is, or is it just that different courses demand different setups, and so that's just what we're seeing?
I think it's more simply put. I think the term gravel is just too broad
Yeah,
now.
yeah,
Like,
yeah.
I think it's just not, to say it's a gravel bike is no longer suitable in that it just means so many different things now, and it has it's been divided into so many little like so many fractions and subdivisions of itself that I think we do. Just like we wouldn't say, oh, that was that's a mountain bike, or that's a mountain bike for mountain bike racing. I think we've reached the same point for gravel where a single term is no longer enough to define the bike. So yeah, I don't think we'll get into that today. I don't think we need to redefine what gravel is and isn't, but I do think you've got the scope that goes from the edge of what a road bike does all the way through to what a mountain bike does, and I just think that that's a pretty broad spectrum.
I was looking through Alex's World Champs Tech Gallery, and I kind of had to laugh at the Merida inclusion, because it seems like it's a new gravel bike from Merida, but I mean they turned up to the Gravel World Championships with a new bike, and then apparently the mechanics were trying to keep Alex and other media at arm's length, so they couldn't like photograph it. It's like, yeah, you're obviously using it here, so it can be seen. It's going to be on TV for the next 5 hours. What are you holding me back for now? But I mean, yeah, the bike could also, if you told me it was one of their road bikes, I could believe you, because it's the way Mohoric and the other rider had it set up. It was effectively just like, what's the widest tires we can squeeze into this road frame, which I'm still not convinced that isn't exactly what it is.
It could very well be like a new endurance road bike from Merida.
Yeah,
looking at those photos, and the storage hatch and all that, I'd be more tempted to say it's like
the taped closed storage hatch.
Yeah. I'm more tempted to say it's like a Sculpture endurance kind of endurance going road bike, kind of like in the same vein as like a Cervelo Caledonia sort of bike, rather than a gravel bike. But I guess time will tell on that one. Well, yeah, if you want to see what we're sort of talking about as far as the wide variety that is gravel tech at the UCI World Championships, then Alex Hunt was on the ground for us and has a few reports. He covered Marion Voss's bike, he covered Tom Pidcock's bike, and there's sort of a wrap-up gallery as well of all the tech. So do head to Escape Collective to check that out and see what we're talking about. All right, Ron. Well, speaking of tire widths and things that may or may not make sense, Gustav Gullholm, aka Dangerholm, the sort of a bike tinkerer slash customizer who's linked with the likes of like R2 Bike and Scott Bikes, and always puts together really cool builds and sort of often steals a lot of attention when it comes showtime. He was at Bespoked with two wholly customized Scott bikes, one a scale hardtail and one a Spark full suspension, and both were converted into sort of futuristic looking gravel bikes, with a key feature with them being some rather wild prototype wheels that may never see the day as far as production, but they're out there. So the story with this, which again is covered on Escape, but the story with this is he worked with Canadian-based companies Faction Bike, who did the design, and LX Lab, who did the sort of rideable prototypes, and he's come up with some pretty crazy wide wheels. Yeah, I mean, should I mention some numbers?
Yeah, numbers is always good.
All right, so the wheels are kind of based around making ultra-wide aerodynamic wheels to suit modern mountain bike size gravel tires, so like 29 by 2.1 or 29 by 2.25 inch wide tires. And so the wheels are greatly scaled up externally, 52 millimeters wide, 70 mil deep, and the fun one, 45 millimeter inner rim width. Ronan is both laughing and crying at this moment. So the idea here is a simple one, which is that Gullholm loved riding the Zip 303 Explore wheels so much, which, as a reminder, is 32 mil internal, designed for 40 to 45 mil with gravel tires. He loved riding them so much that he thought, let's scale it up, because if wider tires are the future of gravel, then we should have matching wheels to suit. I love Gulholm. I
Mm.
love so much of what he does. This isn't it.
You said the idea is a simple one. Maybe the word you're looking for is terrible.
Yeah. I think fundamentally, I think at the most fundamental point is that Gulholm said he loved the ride that those Zip Explore wheels provided and the stability they provided, and wanted to scale up the idea. And I think fundamentally that's where we disagreed the most, is that I didn't love that. I thought those rims were too wide for the proposed tire width, and that the stability he's talking about is just like the flattening of the tire tread to the point that the bike just wants to go forward but not
Straight.
steer. Yeah. Which can be good, but again, not for my gravel. Yeah, I mean, what do you think about this?
I think what did you say? 52 mil wide external. I mean, that's as wide as the most popular aero rims are deep. that's probably where I start.
Yeah.
And then the actual depth of the rim is like 70 mil, plus your 2.1 tire on top of that. So you're going to end up with like, what, 100 mil cord length there?
At least.
Interesting.
That is a word, yes. So yeah, I mean, again, to reiterate, like, these aren't going into production. These are just like almost like a, what do you call it? Like the equivalent of a concept car, I guess.
Yeah.
It's like sort of designed for a show, to be a talking piece. Maybe it inspires future design, maybe not, but it's just, some brands working together to create something that is merely a concept. But yeah, it is a rideable concept, which I think is interesting. But yeah, I think to me, these just served as a reminder, and seeing all the praise that came from these online, it serves as a reminder that just because a brand is doing something, it doesn't necessarily mean it's the way forward. That might be overly harsh, but I think, yeah, for me, with those Zip Explore wheels, I found that they squared off the tire profile, and in turn they basically created a sidewall that was very susceptible to sidewall cuts. It was very exposed to rocks, and it became became extremely sensitive to pressure, because you had so much volume within a constrained width that 1 psi here or there was enough to be the difference between like striking the rim or bouncing off every rock you saw. So I think, yeah, those Zip Explore wheels, as a reminder, like I did review them. You can read my review on Escape, but yeah, that narrow pressure band and pressure window, I found that it made the wheels very good for like a very defined type of gravel. But if you were riding over widely varied surfaces, so like from road all the way through to like rocky terrain, that I just couldn't find an ideal pressure that did it all, which is different to what a more normal gravel width rim offers. I don't normally have that problem on a more traditional wheel setup. So yeah, I think, yeah, there perhaps is scope for these wheels to be great in some circumstances, but I think they're going to be incredibly compromised in others.
And I think that's why, also, like you mentioned the online reaction. I think that's why, like, we didn't just look at this and go, "Oh, that's a neat concept bike or concept wheel set," is because, yeah, the reaction seems to be, if some is good, then more is better, and that's what got us to the Zip Explorer to start with. And now if we're going to apply that to the Explorers and take it even further, yeah, perhaps, like, I obviously haven't ridden the concept wheel that Dangerholm brought at the weekend. Perhaps I'm wrong, but I tend to agree with you.
Yeah. And I think like the use case I often see with those Zip Explore wheels today is a lot of the pros are now running mountain bike tires on them, equivalent of 50, 55, 57 mil width tires. And I think the thing to remember is that Zip released those fully claiming that they were optimized around 40 to 45 mil tires. So I think, in a sense, the trend moved on, and people are now running wider tires on those wheels. And dare I say, Zip got lucky with that, in that no longer are there question marks around like them ignoring ETRTO, because those wider tires just are now fine on that 32 mil wide rim. And I think the quirks around it being too wide for a 40 or 45 mil wide tire are also, greatly reduced by running an even wider tire. But yeah, for me, I think it's worth reiterating that Zip didn't intend for that necessarily to happen. I mean, the whole claim was we've optimized this wheel around a narrow tire, and yeah, I maintain it was compromised.
I think a big part of all this too is the rule of 105 that Josh Portner at Silke cites, which, yeah, from speaking to multiple sort of industry experts, that's no longer a thing really. It was important when we were using tubulars and more V-shaped rims, but with the modern shape of rim, it's from what I understand, speaking to as I said, industry experts, that's no longer as important or in any way important anymore. It's much more about the rim shape and the design that is built into a rim and how that interacts with the flow coming off a tire than just the width. And so I think it's, maybe some legacy of the rule of 105 being important, and people thinking, oh, well, if I've got a 2.1 tire and I get a 50 mil rim, or 52 mil wide external rim, then I'm adhering to the rule of 105. And yeah, I just don't think that's something we need to be adhering to anymore.
Yeah, my skeptical viewpoint of that is that the 105 rule became so widely known and was so strongly promoted that it's an easy selling tool for a wheel manufacturer to adhere to, because the vast majority of people just associate that rim, that rule with being a fast setup. And if you can provide that rule or meet that rule off-road, then I think you're going to sell a lot of wheels to people that have heard that 105 rule and want to apply it to all their bikes. But yeah, as you said, not all aerodynamicists we speak to agree with that. And I think, yeah, you've had a few on your performance process that have just straight out said, we don't see any evidence of that in our testing.
They were a lot more direct than that. Yeah, that's a polite version of what I was told about the rule of 105. And sure. I think, to come full circle here, let's assume the rule of 105 is still important. If you do adhere to that and you have got it's a fast setup on a straight line, and the milliseconds that you're gaining per straight, you're potentially losing much more than that on every corner, based on the experience that you had, where you're just not having the same positive feelings on those wider rims.
Yep. Or a torn sidewall is a pretty slow tire.
That will slow you down. Yeah, that will slow you down in a hurry.
Yep. So anyway, always love to see what Dangerholm's up to, and I think it's worth reiterating that there are elements of his bikes that are just mind-blowingly cool. But yeah, I do hope that these wide wheels come into the market with a level of care and testing that's I'm not sure we've seen today.
I think you're hoping they don't come into the market.
Yeah.
I mean, let's just before we do move on, as you said, we do usually love Dangerholm's work, and this has felt kind of like a bit of an attack on his work here, which, if it's just a concept thing for the laughs, then I don't think we are actually attacking it, or that's not how we set out to cover this piece. But if it does end up being a fully fledged product, I'm not sure that's something either of us want to see.
Yep. So more testing. Well, let's move on. Yeah, again, I think I'm going to be repeating this a few times this episode, but head to escapecollective.com and you can see all of this with your eyeballs, and don't just listen to it. So yeah, next on the list, Campagnolo. They have gone a little ultra. If Super Record weren't enough, there are now ultra upgrades.
Super Record Ultra.
Super Record Ultra. So you still would buy your Super Record group set, but then this is an optional extra which you can add on to bump up the price a little more, make it a little bit fancier.
It's basically some chain rings and stuff. It's not a new group set though, Dave, is it?
Correct. Yeah, it's some big rings, a couple of cassettes, and some ceramic Ultra Torque bottom bracket bearings. And I think there's some stuff here to talk about because fundamentally kind of feels like they've almost given us the super record that they used to sell us before they took away some of these features and reduced the price.
I was reading the press release and I was like, wait a minute.
Yeah,
This used to just be, apart from the carbon chin rings, fair enough, but the rest of it
sure.
just used to be standard spec on Super Record.
Yeah, like the
And
ceramic bearings absolutely were. Yeah.
yeah, and like there's always been this thing with Campag being too confusing, and you've got Chorus, which is like Ultegra but better, and you've got Record, which is like Durace but better, and you've got Super Record, which is like Record but better than, and it's super. And we were we thought that sort of stuff was going away, and it was just going to be Campagnolo Durace and Campagnolo Ultegra, and we have not got that. This is more confusion, and it's more money.
Yep.
For the stuff that we used to get as spec in what it was a middle of the very expensive group set, and they did manage to find a way to bring the price down.
Yeah.
And I think now we know how.
Yep. So my take on this is they brought the price down and then immediately heard from people being like, well, now I'm just going to go spend money on like carbon tie chain rings, ceramic speed bearings for my crank, and I'll get an aftermarket titanium cassette, which is even lighter. And so I think Campagnolo either had planned to or have reacted with, like a carbon aluminium hybrid chainring that saves 28 to 34 grams from its own chainring. Big ring costs €330 now. There's a €620 cassette, just two size options, 10 to 33 or 11 to 36. They save 44 grams respectively. And then there's the Ultra Torque ceramic bearings, which to my eye look identical to what Super Record historically came with. It's the same model bearing and all that. So yeah, so it's the option of three pieces. You can buy them each individually. You don't have to get it all at once. But I think Campagnolo will also sell you them all at once. But yeah, it is kind of funny given that they effectively took a lot of these things away and now they give it them back.
Yeah, and I think we're going to have to, like, we've heard a lot of talk about a new direction for Campag and the coming years. Like the new 13-speed wireless was like step one, and we're going to see updates applied to across its range and new introductions into the range. And I guess we're just going to have to wait and see what those are. Because the question is now, if Super Record is actually just Record and Ultra is actually just Super Record, then what happens to the actual record?
Yeah, I think there are some unanswered questions there as far as what the hierarchy of components looks like moving forward. And we have seen like Record, for example, in the mechanical range disappeared, and so I wouldn't be terribly surprised if we saw it disappear in future in the wireless 13-speed range. And I don't know what the second tier would look like. Campagnolo have said that they don't plan to remain as a top tier only group set offering. They really want to get back to their roots of being a multi-price point and competitive brand. And I think I can say that much. But it does remain to be seen what all this looks like. But yeah, Ultra, it's interesting. Yeah, I think it's worth noting that with this Ultra stuff, there probably is some precedent with it similar happening in the industry. And what comes to mind for me was back in 2009, Shimano had its Umea offering on the mountain bike space for XTR. So you could buy Shimano's top end group set, and then on top of that, you could get these Umea upgrade kits, which were largely like bolt upgrades, like gold-colored aluminium, but they'd also involve like a fancier chain with special coatings and a few other bits and pieces that saved weight and added a bit of bling. So it's not the first time we've seen a big brand do these sort of upgrade kits to, I guess, fill in demand that only aftermarket companies tend to fill.
Yeah, you may remember that, Dave, but I don't.
That joke was extra.
Yeah, that was... Dave, shall I tell my Mike factory visit story about carbon chain?
Sure, please do.
I was on a trip to the Mike facility there recently. I was on a different trip.
This is the brand that most people would pronounce Misha, right?
Misha.
All right. M-I-C-H-E. Yep.
I think the reason I say Mika is because I think that's actually how they pronounce it. So, anyway, long story short, they make similar carbon layered chainrings.
Mm.
And we were showing how they are assembled and put together. And at one point I asked, are they heavier than Dura-Ace chainrings? Because they're only available in like Shimano configurations. And the Miike representative said, no, they're not heavier. And so I asked, well, are they lighter? And he was like, no, they're not lighter. Like, well, okay. Are they the same? So yeah, I'm not exactly sure if they are heavier or lighter, but I doubt they're exactly the same weight. I think it may be, in hindsight, it maybe comes down to the fact that they're like a solid chainring and the Duras have openings, and so you're not really comparing apples to apples is kind of the best
What do you mean by
explanation I
that?
can come up with. What I mean by that, so here's one I made earlier.
Mm.
The Duras chainring has these openings, like if you imagine the SRM Spider.
Mm.
Yeah, there's no gap. You can explain it now better than I can because you're looking at what I mean. But am I
Well,
making
Ronan's
any
holding
sense?
up a R9200 Shimano crank, and it's got windows between the crank arm and the chainring. Uh, if you imagine the gap between the spider and where the chainring starts, I guess that's what Ronan's talking about as holes.
Hmm.
Whereas like a spider based power meter or an aero chainring would fill those holes.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. Yeah.
And so, does filling those holes take a chainring that would have been lighter and make it heavier? I don't know.
Yeah. I still think you could, as a brand, you should be able to answer whether your product is lighter or heavier than the competitor you're replacing.
Either way, they were very nice looking.
Okay, interesting. How will people see these? Are you planning some content?
I am, Dave, but yeah, as I said, that wasn't the purpose of the visit. And the purpose of the visit will take me time, and so hopefully at some point I'll get to put together an article on how these chainrings are made. But yeah, it was kind of an added bonus rather than the purpose of that trip.
What was the purpose of that trip?
A bike.
Huh. Okay. You seem reluctant to tell me about it, so I'm guessing you are sworn to secrecy.
I just know that I signed an NDA, and that other publications may have signed the same NDA, and then wrote about the bike anyway. So I'm just not really sure what I can and can't say.
Right. Okay. All right, Ren. Well, given that's under NDA, I think we've covered Campagnolo's ultra offerings long enough. Ronan, you and I were discussing last week where we discovered that we're both listeners to the People versus Algorithms podcast. And yeah, it's sort of like what would you call it? Like a cultural tech podcast, sort of media leaning, modern influence of wider tech.
I'm trying to remember the tagline at the start of every episode, and did they just recently get rid of it? Or maybe they've decided to keep, I can't remember, but I've heard it so many times and now I can't recall what it is. Welcome to People versus Algorithms, where the show where we discuss blah 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 media trends, blah blah blah.
Very helpful. All right, so but yeah, they have a segment at the end of their podcast there where they call it Good Product, where they sort of just talk about product that sort of they've been fascinated by or they've enjoyed during their week, and it's not necessarily always like directly related to their work, but just stuff that they've appreciated. And
It's not always even a product.
It's not always a product, no. Sometimes it's a concept. Sometimes it's just an excuse to rant about nothing, it seems. But I still like the segment. It's actually very close to sort of what we originally had in mind with On Our Minds. But with that, I think we should borrow that segment because I think it's a nice way to talk about things that have been on our minds, but without making it a big segment. So with that, is there a product this week that's been on your mind or left you impressed or that you kind of feel like you should talk about?
I do, Dave, and it's related to Campag again, because as listeners may know from our In for Review episode, I have the Super Record wireless 13-speed group set in for review. That bike is going back next week, so I need to get that reviewed on ASAP also. But long story short, I was reminded on Sunday how good Campag's brakes are, because I was coming down a pretty rapid descent with that sort of evening sunset glare. I could see where I was going, but it was definitely a bit of a glare in my eyes. And then all of a sudden I noticed that there was a farmer had opened the gate perpendicular to the road. So basically there was a gate across the road and I was approaching it at about 60 km an hour. And I mean Shimano and SRAM brakes would have worked also, but I was just reminded in that moment how good camp bag brakes are, because it was like the ground was, the closer I got to the gate, the more cowpat there was on the ground also. So I was kind of navigating that, also trying to get it stopped as quickly as I could. And yeah, just the braking power and the modulation and everything that camp bag brakes are known for is still there in the new group set. And yeah, I'm quite enjoying it. They do, maybe that it takes a bit of getting used to, but I've been on the bike for a week or 10 days at this point anyway. And early on, there was a couple of moments where I just locked up a little bit, not expecting the additional power, or not being used to it, maybe is a better way to put it. But yeah, in that moment, I was like, these are good brakes.
I would say for most of the riding I've been doing, I generally prefer like the new SRAM E1 brakes over Shimano's hydraulic brakes. I think SRAM has the edge. How would you rate the latest Campagnolo in the mix?
So that's kind of, I'd been on D1 immediately prior to the camp bike stuff, and so I do want to now break out an E1 bike here and just compare that, just for a fresh comparison in my mind before I sit down to write that review.
Yeah, I think it's probably worth noting that like these brakes at this level are often really good, and it's largely more personal preference than it is like pure functional performance. You know, they have quite distinct feel differences, and so it can be tough to say one is better than the other when it is largely personal. But yeah, certainly Campagnolo. I mean, their early days, they collaborated with Magura, braking experts Magura, on I believe the design of their brakes, and you know, to this day they still use some Magura elements of their brakes, including the fluid. So yeah, certainly has had some real expertise put into that system. So not surprising that you find them enjoyable.
Yeah, I mean, I have put Campagnolo brakes up there as the first good product on Geek Warning. So not to contradict myself, but first of all, agreed. Most of the premium braking systems are pretty phenomenal these days. If I was to rank them, I think Dura-Ace would be at the bottom, simply because, you know, heavy braking episodes tend to seemingly warp the disc for a second. You just hear this like rubbing for a little while afterwards, and yeah, you don't get that with the other two systems now. And so that for that reason, it's probably, you know, if I was going to go into ranking them, it would be, you know, I'll reserve judgment on separating SRAM and Campagnolo until I ride the E1 again, but I think I already know which in third place there.
Interesting. Yeah. All right. One for a future topic, I guess, once you spend a bit more time on it, and I'm hoping to spend some time on those brakes as well and cross compare against the best from the brands that I've got here. You know, I've got SRAM Ready 1 on rotation here, and I've also got a bike with the latest GRX, which in theory is Shimano's best drop bar braking system. So yeah, I feel like I'm well placed to offer an opinion on this one soon as well. So I think we'll return to this topic. But to shift things up a bit, Ronan, I think you had a bit of a PSA on 80mm saddle tools.
Is it a PSA or is it a pet peeve? I don't know, but it's more just the like. So obviously we discussed the 80mm tool quite frequently on this show, and I think I included in my favorite things last year or the year before. But it's basically like a rectangle with an open side, and the open side is 80mm wide, and you can set this all over a saddle, and it gives you a definitive, and yes, just like the one that you're holding up to your nose like a handlebar mustache there, Dave.
Yeah.
And the idea is that you can
go hipster if you turn it upside down.
Oh, yes. It's kind of Dutch more so than hipster.
I think I just poked myself in the eye with it. I'm going to stop playing with that now.
Anyway, the idea is that it gives you a repeatable measuring point for setting your saddle height. And I just think the point of this tool is missed, in that people seem to be overly concerned whether it's 80mm or 84mm or 85 or 70 and as far as I'm concerned,
wrong.
perhaps
It should be 75.
I think you got it right. The first half of that was right, Dave, that all the measurements are wrong. It's not that there is a
Yeah,
magical width point of the saddle that is the perfect width to measure to. The only reason I like this tool is it gives me a repeatable point. It's like the opposite of the dartboard accuracy and precision analogy, in that, you know, the if we assume that the bullseye is hitting the bullseye is like perfect accuracy on a dartboard, we don't know what the bullseye is in the saddle. And so what we're looking for is precision, that we're picking any other point on the dartboard and we're perfectly hitting that every single time we go to measure. And so I've found it useful.
repeatability.
Repeatability, and I've found the 80mm tool useful for setting up different saddles on different bikes and having a repeatable point to measure to. And sure, you know, if we set that width at 50mm, that's not going to work. And if we set it at 100mm, it's probably also not going to work. But anywhere in around the 80, all the saddles have different profiles. The bikes have different geometries, all sorts of other influencing factors mean that it is like and like I've had people asking, but what point on the 80mm tool are you measuring to, and is it the front or is it the rear? And it really doesn't matter. Just pick a point on
Pick
the
one.
80mm tool that
Yep.
you have that is repeatable and measure to that point.
Yep. I think we've had this topic on the podcast before, but like the history of that 80 mil tool is largely I guess it really came into popularity when short nose saddles first came to the market, and the likes of Pro would actually include this with their packaging to
Mm.
let you go from your long nose saddle. You'd measure the 80 mil mark on your long nose saddle and then replicate that 80 mil mark on the short nose saddle, and that is kind of where you should measure from, as far as like your saddle fore aft setback, and that way where your sit bones or not sit bones are sitting on the saddle, where where the wide part of the saddle is kind of in line and stays consistent. Uh, and yeah, I think what you're saying is completely true. Is like whatever way you choose to measure a saddle or choose to measure bikes is just that's the way you should do it from there on, and you should be consistent in it. And yeah, I think whatever tool you pick for you and I think we've both settled on using these 80 mil tools, but
Mm.
just keep it consistent. And I think it's worth a reminder, and this is where the PSA probably comes in, is that if a bike fitter gives you numbers, pay close attention to how they get those numbers. Because you then going home and using a completely different tool system to take those numbers is just inventing numbers again.
Which is, so often when we're going on press camps or whatever, that we get asked, oh, what's your bike fit? What's your saddle height? We'll have the bike ready to go for you. And I always reply, I will do my own setup. Because quite often the question is, what's your saddle height? And I just wouldn't be bothered getting into the conversation. Well, how do you measure saddle height? Because because I guarantee you the person asking me this in email is not the person who's measuring the saddle height anyway. So they're going to have to go to somebody else and ask them a question. And it's just easier if I just turn up and apply my process for replicating my bike fit. But one of the other common methods is to measure either 12 centimeters from the back of the saddle or 12 centimeters from the front of the saddle. Different people have a different opinion on which of those directions you should measure in, but I would say both are wrong. Because that is, if we're talking about benefits of the 80mm tool, that is part of the reason for it being in and around 80mm, is that you actually get to the same width point on different saddles that you're measuring to. And if you take a Physique Arion and
which has a long tail.
Yeah, exactly. You're going to end up in a different point of the saddle. Or even if you took 3 or 4 different saddles with the same length of tail, let's call it, the angle at which, or the how quickly they taper in from their widest point to their narrowest point will influence how you sit on that saddle.
Yeah.
And so just measuring 12 centimeters from the back or the front is going to, it might leave you in the same position every saddle. It might leave you in completely different positions. And while the 80 may be right, may be wrong, we don't know, at least you're always measuring to the point of the saddle that is that width. And so that's kind of the other thing. It's like, pick a width, whether it be 80 and whatever point it is on your 80mm tool that you measure to, or whether it be 70, but don't mix and match between 70 and 80mm widths. It's pick one approach and let that be your approach. And there is no right and there is no wrong, so long as you're in around that 80mm point.
Yeah. Funnily enough, you've managed to wrap up all Geek Warnings branded segments into one. You've got a pick one, you've got a PSA, you've got a good product. There's an on your mind, and
Is pick
it's somehow
one?
also tech news because it was featured in Chris Hirschap's Instagram post recently. He's a member and I guess the 3D printer extraordinaire who made your 80mm tool.
Yes,
had posted about this. So,
he
but yeah,
also sells them.
yes, he does. Yeah. I just on this topic, I'm going to put out a request to any bike fitters paying attention and listening, and also shop mechanics to, if you're putting together fit sheets for customers that with all their dimensions, be clear on how you've made those measurements. If you have used an 80mm tool, be clear on that. Where on the saddle have you measured from? I know this isn't the easiest thing to do, but another way to look at it is maybe ask the customer how they plan to measure the fit, and then give them those measurements in addition to your own. I think it would help greatly to have numbers that other people can look at and understand how to replicate them. So
I've just realized that pick one and good product may have some overlap.
Well, I don't know. Pick one is like us, is like our collective favorites that we now publish on Escape, where it's like,
do we even
this
do
is the
pick one
category
anymore?
No, not really, because we've got collective favorites, and it's like this is the category. What's the one product from that category would we pick? And good products is just like a product that's been on our mind for the week that we've enjoyed that week. So,
Dave, you like to pick the wax that I picked, don't you?
I do like to. Yeah, I just follow your lead on this topic. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you want to explain what the joke is there?
Just I don't know how to explain that really.
To just explain what that joke was there for the listeners who maybe don't know. We had collective favorites last week with our favorite drivetrain lubricants, I think was the title on it. And I had missed the memo about that one, so my pick hadn't been included. But it was just the exact same as yours. It's like Silka's hot melt wax or Ceramic Speed's UFO drip, depending on which direction you're, or both, yeah. And so I'd messaged you just saying, can we just add a bracket saying and Ronan to your pick? And you replied back, informing me that you, the expert, the godfather of chain waxing on internet cycling media publications, regularly get asked what I do. And people want to copy what I do, and I'm like, I just copy what Dave does. You've got this wrong, people.
I'm not going to take the I'm certainly not a godfather. I'm merely the messenger. But certainly have been reporting on it for a long time. So it's long enough to comfortably say that been there, done that.
Yeah. So if you want to know what I do, just ask Dave what he does.
All right. Well, thank you very much. That's very kind. Well, on that, I think we might head on over to Ask a Wrench, where we close it off for the free listeners and open it up only for members of Escape Collective. This week on Ask a Wrench, we've got Zach joining us once more, and we're going to be answering some questions related to some fun ones, actually. There's one asking about some of the technologies that we sort of would steer people away from, and technologies that worry us. There's a great question about sort of the use of grease and anti-seizers and Loctites or thread lockers, and sort of when or how to use them, which I think is a really good deep dive topic, which we'll get into. We've got a tip about bolts and where to find some spares from on your bike. And Lucky Last got a question slightly a little different to what we normally answer, but about an Omnium cargo bike and tire setups, and got some cool input and perspective to share on that one from actually not myself, but from an expert in the space. So plenty to discuss there. But of course, you will need to be a member of Escape Collective to hear it. So head on over, escapecollective.com/join. Sign up. It only takes a couple of minutes to then get access to the member-only podcast. And from there, you'll be able to listen to basically everything we ever talk about. So yeah, you'll be able to log in and see all the articles and listen to all the podcasts, including Ronan's Performance Process series and all the Geek Warning, including the episode you might have just missed, which was in for review with the entire tech team, sort of catching up on what we've been testing and what we've been thinking about lately, which published just a few days ago. So plenty to get into. Ronan, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. Well, I think you've got some specific testing ahead of you for something that you teased at the beginning of the episode, and I've spent this entire episode sitting in mountain bike kit, so I'm gonna get onto my bike.
Enjoy.
All right. Speak soon. Cheers. Thanks to Will Jones of Red Bricks Media for the editing and mixing of this episode.